It's episode 65 of Chit Chat, and new game announcements are happening left and right. Because publishers aren't just standing around waiting for conventions. Of course, there are plenty of those popping up in our very own homes.
Welcome back to Chit Chat.
Yep, it is episode 67. We are going to talk about a few things tonight. This is kind of a good old-fashioned episode of Chit Chat. We're going to mention COVID-19 just because it's made us stay here yet again. In fact, we were hoping to get back into the studio and record this together, but things seem to be going back in the wrong direction, so we're playing it safe and doing it this way probably for a little while left. But tied into that, we're going to talk about the fact that it's kind of convention season, but all the cons are not happening, but there are cons happening, but they're just online. No one cares on the publishing front because they're all just announcing games anyway. So we're going to talk about some announced games and, of course, just kind of what we've been up to. So before we do any of that, we're going to talk about who won last episode.
Right. So last week we gave away Alma Mater, and that is going to Florian Palmier.
Oh,
so
congratulations.
All you have to do is email us at manvsmeeple@gmail.com. And this week we're giving away a copy of The Search for Planet X. Look at David's screen. That's it right there. It's from Renegade Game Studios, and it's pretty cool. Like, we love deduction games. I love deduction games.
Yeah.
And that's one of those where you have to find some hidden planets. So it's cool. What?
Yeah, it's a lot like Cryptid. It's kind of got that Cryptid vibe to it.
A little bit.
The vibe.
Of the vibe, yeah. I love
the
Cryptid.
vibe. By the way, Florian, congratulations, as I said, and this isn't actually going to be out until August, so we will pre-order it for you, and as soon as it's in the warehouse, we will get you a copy. So,
oh wow,
just so you know.
What did Florian win again?
Alma Mater.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you'll enjoy it, I'm sure.
David, you lead off because you're leading the charge on this one.
Okay. Well, we're talking about cons, and I don't know if anyone noticed, but the BGG/Dice Tower VirtualCon 2020 is what they're calling it, happened, when was it, last Wednesday through Sunday or something like that? Or Thursday, like maybe? I don't know who all here participated in it. I actually volunteered to play on Thursday, and I don't even know, I never saw this broadcast. I don't even know where to go to watch it, if it even exists out there, but it felt like it was being broadcast because people seemed to be commenting while we were doing it. It was me, Steph Hodge, and Rainer from Board and Dice playing Tawantin Suyu because I'd been kind of consumed with Tawantin Suyu over the last month, so I volunteered to play. I didn't win. I don't want to spoil it, but I didn't win. I led the entire time, which I was proud of, but in the end, Rainer, who is from the publisher, so it kind of makes sense, kind of like scored crazy amounts of points and passed Steph and I up by a long shot. Although, interestingly enough, Steph and I both scored like in the 120, like the 100 and teens, something like that, maybe over 110, but we were the exact same score, which is always phenomenal to me when we get our points differently, but we end up in the exact same space.
What was the tiebreaker? I forget in that game.
You know what? I forget what the tiebreaker was. Oh, I think it was the number of people you had left, which
yeah,
you're only going to have 0 to 2, and I can't remember who had more. I think I might have had a guy, but I'm not sure.
Now, David, I haven't gone to any of these virtual conventions yet. So as someone who participated in one, now, were you playing that? Were people watching you play that live?
I think so, because Rainer, and it was some of our same fans, because Rainer was commenting about how Gator Dave was saying stuff in the comments. So they were watching somewhere. It was kind of this interesting thing where Rainer was streaming it from Board and Dice, but he was streaming it to BGG, and they were taking it and streaming it out. And I don't know if that was happening on BGG proper or Twitch or YouTube or what. I should, but I don't. But that's all I know, Ryan. I didn't really answer your question.
No, not really. But that's something I've wondered for a while, because everyone is doing these cons, and I have complicated thoughts about these conventions. But at the same time, it's like, how do you organize something like this to the point where, like, you, David, coming on can interact with the fans, right? Like, you didn't necessarily know where to go. We don't know if people are going to be able to watch this content afterwards. I mean, are the people that are watching it live the only people that are ever going to see it?
Yeah.
So it's a lot of questions that I have.
I think that's fair, and I'll let someone else talk about this. But after the fact, as vain as I am, I did want to go check it out to see what it looked like, and I couldn't find it anywhere. Like I went to BGG, and it almost kind of appeared as though all that was being streamed was what was live at that moment, and I didn't see any archive for anything like that. So I'm not exactly sure
Yeah,
what
these-
the
Well,
answer is.
BGG's.
These virtual.
Oh, go ahead, Jeremy. Sorry.
Go ahead,
I
Karen.
say like BGG is always really good. They do these live streams at all these shows. They've been doing this forever, right? Like the live streaming during a show is their thing. And when they're done with the show, it's not immediate. Like when we're done with Chit Chat Live, it's up on the channel. They cut them and they upload them to their YouTube, and then they attach them to the BGG pages for the games they're associated with. So I imagine we will see something similar happen there, but to be seen. What were you gonna say, Jeremy?
Yeah, and maybe.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jeremy.
I was just going to say I'm amazed at how many virtual cons, even outside of the board game industry, we're seeing. It seems like almost every day. I'm on video game websites all the time, but not just video games, but like like PopCon. Like we have an indie PopCon, which is about comic books, and we're having a virtual con for that. There's all kinds of like comic book virtual cons now.
Comic-Con.
Yeah, I mean it's like everything has a virtual con of some sort, and I'm not disparaging that, but I just think it's I'm curious on how well these are actually going over. I know they're getting views, and I know people are watching them, but I want to see, and what I would love to see is a con that incorporates pre-purchases. Like if BGG was able to work with the publishers to have like that Gen Con experience, and then you could buy them directly from BGG or buy them from whatever distribution chain, so you can get those games within a week. How they're supposed to be at the con, but now they're not. They're sitting in a warehouse somewhere. I want to have people be able to get those games in their own, in their hands immediately. And that would be very interesting to have some kind of pre-purchase that's built into those where people can start buying them during that virtual con.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
It's kind of strange because I feel like definitely for board games, less so maybe for video games, but definitely Comic-Con too. The swag is a huge part of going to these conventions.
Oh, absolutely.
And seeing the hottest game being demoed and watching maybe David play Tawatansuyu, is that close enough? Watching David play that and saying, I want this game today, well, tough luck. You have to find it somewhere, buy it. So I agree with you. I think if this is a thing that people want to do going forward, the purchasing and distribution of product has to be integrated. There has to be a button where you can just click it and say buy right now or whatever. That's right there, because it adds to that experience. Like, you're getting the game that you just watched. It's not the same as walking away from the demo table with that physical copy, but I think it does kind of trigger the same, emotional experience a little bit.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Greg on here is mentioning how movie studios are going to releases, like on-demand movies now. And I feel like it's kind of like the same thing. Like being able to purchase these games on demand when they're announced would be a really, really nice aspect for people. But I mean, the great thing about virtual cons is, number one, with the way that the industry is right now, and it's so in flux and distribution's in flux, and it's probably going to be more in flux now with COVID coming back, and retail's in flux, and store hours are weird, and people don't want to go out to stores. So getting games in people's eyes now is really important. I think that's the huge thing for virtual cons, is that BGG and Dice Tower and those kind of people are grabbing these games and showing them played. And that's the most important thing, I think, for anybody. If you want to learn about a new game, well, watch one of those streams. You're going to have a really good idea of what it plays like.
I mean, on that same note, though, there's not as many games coming out this year.
Like, oh, no. Yeah.
You'd go to Gen Con and see, even we would see games that hit us out of left field. And it's kind of weird because we're doing these conventions, and Renegade, ran their own Renegade Con a couple weeks ago. But a lot of the games that are being played aren't new hotness. Just because there isn't any new hotness really out there right now. We have a few games coming out every couple of months, and we'll talk a little bit about that later. But it's just weird to me because this 2020 feels just like an empty year. Like, we're going to look back and say, what was even released that year?
I don't know. I mean, I would agree from a retail standpoint and from sort of a consumer standpoint. But we have to remember, and I experienced this just from playing Tawatansuyu, and with us talking about Tekenyu and Tawatansuyu so much, we forget that we've had those. We've played them digitally for a while. We got prototypes of them. But everyone else was super, super hungry for information about those games,
Sure.
as if it was like they're going to a con and learning about them for the first time. It is a little different because, like Jeremy said, I think if someone could figure out a way so that you could really have that experience of like, oh man, that does look good, click buy, like some way to really convert that over into, oh, I'm going to have it now, soon, any day. Now, it worked out with some of the publishers because they had just started recently opening pre-orders for some of these exact same games that we're talking about. So the timing does work right.
Yeah.
And speaking of that, has anyone been paying attention? And please don't turn away from our channel right now when I say this, but like Dice Tower's been doing that summer thing, right? And
This week,
that,
yeah, this whole week.
is that that's involving some like game reveals, right? Like new
Oh, yeah.
games or no?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does anyone know of any games that have been revealed this week through that anyway?
I think the new Bruno Cathala game, the one built on Dragonomino or something like that, yeah, is one of those games. I'm sure there's going to be more. I mean, Dice Tower does a good job about incorporating those type of things in there, but I think their Summer Spectaculars really built around all their different types of programming and doing this programming live, and then of course intermixing some of these new things in there as well.
I would love to do that sort of thing, like what we've seen in the past from IGN when IGN does their Summer of Games, and that would be fun. I mean, even if we could try to pull that off sometime, where we have like line up a bunch of people where they're revealing games, making it a really big deal so people know when to tune in to find out what that next game is from Board and Dice or next game from whoever.
Going back to what Ryan said about not having a lot of games, I think that's probably true. I mean, just my house is where our studio is, and this is where we get the majority of the games, and the number of packages just alone coming in has been dwindled down. But on the flip side, I would say that the games that we have received and that we've covered on the channel have been really good. Like, we've been able to focus more of our time this year on quality games because there's less of them. And we obviously have more time to focus on those particular games, which is a blessing in and of itself. Like, there's so many games in the past 5-6 years that we've been, or at least the past 4 years we've been doing this, that it's impossible for us to touch all those games. And I feel like this year we've done a better job about touching the games that should mean something to our audience and not just, cherry picking one here or there. Like, I feel like we've done a really good job of covering 2020 up until this point.
Well, I think publishers have to be more selective right now. You can't have a launch catalog in 2020 of 15 new games coming out this year. You need, you can have 2 or 3. And so I feel like we're seeing that kind of selectivity, and we're seeing some of these projects that have come out this year have been excellent. I mean, there's been some really great games that come out this year. Now, like, I know this isn't an industry secret or anything, but some people might not realize, like, publishers know some games aren't as good, but yet if you can sell it for a pretty cheap margin and it's a $15 game at a con, people are going to grab those up, and you're going to sell through hundreds of copies of that $15 game. It doesn't matter. It could be played once. You don't really care because you just lost $15, whatever. That income is completely gone this year. And I wonder, like, hits are good, but like heavy Euro games that are like, hobby enthusiast games, they're not necessarily what makes a ton of money for a company. Those smaller games that they can, like Elo is excellent at that. Elo sells a huge variety of these small box games. And like, I just wonder, without that convention presence, who's seeking these games out if you don't actually get to like see and touch and demo them? So that's an interesting question. I would love.
That's industry wide, and I think that's something we should have someone on the channel talking about. That maybe it's a couple publishers talking about it. Maybe it's someone in the distribution chain who's willing to be open about it, because I'm sure some people are very guarded about the things going on with their company right now.
Right.
But this is something that's affecting everybody. Like, there will be publishers at the end of this COVID that are gone, unfortunately, or bought up by larger companies, and that's just because expendable cash isn't there right now. People don't have the money to go out and buy board games because they're trying to feed their families. And, it's a bad situation this year. And hopefully people come out on the stronger side of that.
Yeah, I mean, on the other side of it, while there's not a lot of games coming out, maybe that's a good thing, right? Because, again, money is tight. And so maybe people are waiting until the right time to release games, or they're releasing fewer so that they, can have some share that's good and still have stuff getting out there. But maybe slowing down a little bit. Real quick, though, I want to say hello to some board game celebrities who are in our chat. If you guys do not know about Our Family Plays Games, they were just on Good Morning America.
Sweet.
And they're in the chat, so please click on their handle in our chat and follow them. Thank you so much for tuning in, you guys.
Segment.
Is he?
It's
Is he telling you it's my turn in Stone Age because I'm playing him on BGA right now?
Oh yeah, right now
nice.
while you're on Chit Chat.
Well, it's not real time. This is the first. This is the first time I've ever played a game on BGA turn-based. So you get emails saying, "Hey, it's your turn," and I started a game and I've never played that way. So I feel bad when because I'm not constantly on BGA and I'm not also constantly checking my emails. So I'll go like a day and it's still my turn. literally, just
I don't doubt you at all.
It's my turn to place one of my workers, and then you place one of your workers and then I close it. And then like half a day later, I'm like, oh, it's time to play again. And I place my next worker. And I feel bad because I don't know how people who play that way, if they just constantly have it kind of open and like so that they can get to it when as soon as they can. And then someone else asked me into another game of Tobago, which is 4-player. So I've got both of those games going on right now in that way, and I'm having a hard time keeping up, so I apologize.
It's maybe the last 2 BGA games you ever play.
Right.
I genuinely thought they might go,
We're not inviting Dave back again.
That's hilarious. Well, so Carol in the comments is saying it's okay to have a light year of releases, but Kickstarter is still insane. I have to say, I'm actually surprised how much Kickstarter we're still seeing. I do think it's slowed down quite a bit, but I mean, people are still putting stuff out there. So
I think it seems like the obvious place for maybe even the publishers to pivot to, even the publishers that were already making that pivot. I mean, and unfortunately, on the retail front, that's the real the tough situation, because hopefully a lot of them survive through this. And I mean, how many of you guys have gone over to like FTG or Board Game Preserve to buy some stuff? I mean, I just did. That's why I bring it up.
I'm going tomorrow to get my Doctor Strange deck.
I got Doctor Strange right here.
Well, Marco Polo 2 finally came to the U.S. Z-Man just released Marco Polo 2, so I had to get that because I've been wanting that for a while. But one thing I want to say, because you guys have kind of been circling around this, and I think this is one of the reasons that Kickstarter is doing so well, is because a lot of people spend a lot of money at conventions, and people might have been saving up all year to go to Gen Con or to go to Origins or whatever, and now that's gone. So they kind of have that money back. And so since there's not a lot of games coming out, it's very easy to put that money back into Kickstarter or something to kind of just keep yourself, sated, basically, since we don't have cons. Maybe who knows when the next con will be.
Yeah, I don't know what that answer is, to be quite honest. I'd have to see numbers in front of me, but my personal opinion is that Kickstarter has gone down and that there's a wider gap between the games that do extremely well, like your, Terraforming Mars and your Gloomhavens, to the ones that squeak by and barely fund or not fund at all. So I feel like there's not really a middle ground. And if there is, there's far fewer of them than there was in the past where, I don't know what percentage, but a lot of them were being funded. Mm-hmm. And now I'm not saying that, or they're funding it far, far less than what they have before. I think people are just being very frugal with their money.
Yeah, there are games that I think, like Jeremy, I think we were talking about this a year ago. Some of the games we're seeing that are good games that are up on Kickstarter right now that, we've seen or we've heard about aren't really quite crossing the finish line or the funding line as fast, or they've slowed way down. But a year ago, they would have been killing it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it's a much more. It's almost like it's more saturated because the funds going into Kickstarter have gone down. So like the percentage of saturation.
On the other hand, with these virtual conventions, since you don't have to worry about any expenses like hotels and everything, I think their reach is going to hopefully much greater. So maybe people are getting to have that convention experience that never really did before. I mean, it's not the same, but you are still in Discord rooms, chatting with a bunch of people that you might run into on a show floor, and you might be in a special room for a panel, which is how I imagine that Comic-Con is going to do it. You maybe bring you into a special password protected room so you can watch whatever presentation. So you do get a sense of community, I think, from these events without having to pay for it. So maybe that's the bright side here, if there's a bright side to talk about.
Hard to say.
No,
Or
no
not.
one's talking about
I
the bright
gotta
side.
say, like, for me,
Dark all the way.
big deal. Like, I know this is silly. We're board gamers, but Gen Con, one of the biggest things for me every year, my husband and I, we get junk. Like, you know, we go around and we get the swag. You guys saw me last year walking around with my brand new staff sword. We get one of those like every other Gen Con. So there's like a majesty and a pageantry to going that, like, it's so. I was actually saw my doctor the other day, and she was telling us how, like, her whole family goes to Gen Con and they're super bummed about it. Like, what do we do instead? And it's just one of those things. Like, I don't think that the average gamer outside of tight hobby folks are actually thinking about virtual Gen Con or even necessarily like going to the local board game store, because for them that's the event, right? And so
I mean, this is absolutely hitting your enthusiast gamers and your hardcore gamers. So yeah, that's got to be a concern as well. Your casual people who would go to a convention and walk around aren't making the same purchases.
Yeah.
Right, that's a really good point. And I didn't even think about all of the. I mean, it's so easy because we're in board games, but everyone that's board game adjacent, the people that are at cons that sell the T-shirts, that sell dice, that sell, you know, peripherals that people buy as an impulse purchase. I mean, I'm not gonna spend that kind of money if I think about it. Let's be honest. I spend that kind of money because I'm on the spot. It looks really cool, and I'm in that zone, right? So I might get something. I spend way more money at Gen Con than I would if I was just buying games that I wanted to play from home, right? And that can't be discounted.
Yeah.
So I do think that if there's a draw, though, I think the virtual cons are going to exist, but we're missing some of those extra things that we like. And like Jeremy was saying about having that instant satisfaction that you get from having the game. Like, if there was a way that you can say, like, we're lining up for pre-orders and then it's there, like, it's guaranteed to show up during the Gen Con window, for instance, like, that would be super cool. But then that's a whole different way of thinking about marketing your game than we've ever had to think about, right? It's really just shifting a timeline. But that's, I think, where if we can see some cool stuff like that, where people get that instant satisfaction, it's going to add a little bit more majesty back into the show and draw more people in. But I'm also with Ryan in the fact that, like, people who don't normally make it to these things are going to go just to check it out. Barrier to entry against weather outside and what's going on in your lives as well, I think, is going to be there. So if, like, ticket prices are really high for something that somebody has no idea what that experience is going to be like, I know Gen Con isn't charging, right? So that'll be like a really nice way for people maybe that could never come out to Gen Con to check it out for the first time and see what it's about. So I think there's both sides to it.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, speaking of marketing your games differently, and for those of you at home keeping score, that was a segue. Jamie Stegmaier just announced a game, and I want to talk about a couple games that have just recently been announced. We've seen some press releases coming across, and what was this, just yesterday or the day before that he kind of unveiled some stuff about Pendulum?
I think it was pretty
today.
recent.
I think it was today, wasn't it? I mean, today was his Wednesday big reveal.
That was yesterday. Today's Thursday.
It was yesterday.
Yeah. Okay. So he announced Pendulum. This is the next game. I don't think it's his design. It's designed by Travis Jones is what I'm seeing here. This is a different sort of game. I've done a little bit of research on it, but there's not a lot to be said. There is worker placement going on, and it's been described. In fact, I'm going to do this justice, so I'm going to read it right here. It says, and this is the thing that I think got mine and Jeremy's attention right away. It says, if you enjoy Zolkin, and in parentheses it says time and resource optimization. This is like Jeremy's wheelhouse to the nth degree. And Seven Wonders. Although in Seven Wonders it says simultaneous play, and I kind of understand that. The one thing about this game, after doing a little bit more digging, that has me scratching my head in a I'm not so sure way, is it has sand timers in it. Mm-hmm. So I'm not sure exactly what role those are going to play, but it does sound. The word real time is used in the description in the rounds. The rounds last like 10 minutes, or that's the estimate. So I'm not exactly sure how that plays. And some of the screen grabs I've seen show the sand timers. They look like they're associated with different locations on the board. So I'm not sure if you're placing workers and then flipping over a sand timer. The sand timers are not the workers themselves. That's one thing that I seem to have gleaned from the BGG page.
Yeah, it's weird because they do make a point to say that even like these timers exist, but the game is not about whoever plays the fastest wins. It's definitely, it might be real time, but it's not real time who's fastest, who can grab the pieces when the timer's like whatever. Like it's definitely, it seems to reward strategy and planning is what Stonemaier said. Well, what that means, I don't know, but when I hear that it rewards that planning, I'm interested.
Yeah.
He also said it was the highest rated prototype he's ever had. He pulled this out of one of his game days, which is really cool. He hosts these huge game days where people can come and pitch games and show off their prototypes. And I guess this one he loved enough to publish.
I wasn't even sure what that meant when he said highest rated prototype.
Well, I assume that means I'm assuming that he has everyone that plays games give their opinion. I would imagine that's kind of how he aggregates.
I see.
Like the games he's interested in, because there's no way that he plays every prototype at a game day. I mean, he's one guy, right? So there's no way he has that kind of time.
Well, it looks really cool. Hopefully we'll get our hands on it. I don't know, does anyone know when it's supposed to, like, when is he going to open up for pre-orders? When is it shipping?
It's shipping in August, and I think the embargo lists on like July 17th or something like that.
All right,
for people that have a copy
we'll get it.
So stay tuned for sure.
And so any other games that I know of? One more that's been announced. Does anyone else want to go?
I would like to go because I don't want to steal your thunder, but if you're not going to talk about this, David, I'm definitely going to talk about this. Queen Games just announced, I don't know if you saw this, a Stefan Feld reprint collection of all of his city games. So Bruges and Notre Dame, all these games that are based on cities. And they've released some teaser photos. They just look really cool. I like when boxes look good together on your shelf. I know, Jeremy, you have some of the Designer Series games on your shelf that just look really cool. And when you put all these together, they kind of form a cityscape of
I did see that.
It's really, really cool looking. And as long as they put the same quality into the components and the games as they're putting into the thought of the marketing and the boxes, then I will get every single one of these because I'm such a huge Feld fan.
It's
called the City.
Just get on Instagram, David.
I'll have to look. I'm checked out for the rest of the episode.
I think I first saw it on one of the Facebook groups, but they're calling it the City Collection, and it's just a bunch of Feld games named after cities. You know, he likes to do that.
That's cool. So a lot of those rights must have opened up. I know last year when I had the chance to meet him, one of the conversations that took place at lunch was the fact that he happened to just drop casually that no one had the rights to Bruges except for him at the moment.
Oh,
and
interesting.
We were having lunch there with Travis from Queen and Rob from Blue Peg Pink Peg and Christine and Alicia, and we were like, Travis, reprint Bruges at least. So that's interesting to hear. It'll be interesting because there's a lot of art in Bruges. I don't know if he has to relicense or get new art or what, but that's going to be fierce.
They've only released one image so far.
All right.
The one game that I'll talk about, and I think this has been announced for quite some time, but anyway, at Essen last year, I had a chance to meet Vladimir Suchi. I'm sure you guys know who he is.
Underwater Cities.
You're right. So I talked to, he doesn't speak very good English, so I was actually talking to his wife, Katka, and one of the games he has coming out this year is called Praga Kaput Mročny. I don't know if you've heard of that, but it's a big box game that's built around these ever-changing actions, these actions that will change depending upon the round. So you may go to one round, but the next round it's something completely different. But just take a look at that one on BGG. So hopefully we'll have a copy of that within a month or two, a pre-release
Cool.
copy.
You might have
So
to
I'm
spell that
super
for
excited.
us. So,
Yeah, I'll spell it for you guys. It's Praga, Praga, and then Caput, which is Caput, and then just type that in, you'll find out the rest. But
Oh,
it
interesting.
looks cool. Yeah.
One other one I wanted to mention before we talk about what we've been playing, and some of these kind of overlap there, is New York Zoo. We literally just got a copy of this from Capstone yesterday. Jeremy and I had a chance to play it really quickly this morning at 2-player. I'm going to definitely be playing that over the next few days with maybe more than 2 players. It's a tile placement game where you're going around. Jeremy, what would you compare that mechanism going around the board?
It's like Glenmore. I mean, you're moving
Kind
one to 3 spaces in a multiplayer game and a 3 to 5 player game, but 1 to 4 in a 2-player game. So you're just picking one of those actions and doing whatever it says.
But it is just one piece that you're moving. It's everyone moves the same piece, and you're either picking up a tile and placing it on your board, kind of like Barren Park or Patchwork, or you're going to a different place and taking 2 little animal meeples. I don't know if I'm on screen right now, but I've got this little penguin meeple here. They've got like 5 or I don't know how many different animals. You're filling up those tiles the polyominoes that you're putting on your board with animals, which earns you other bonus tiles, which are attractions. And the game basically ends when someone has their board filled with tiles, whether they're enclosures for the animals or attractions. It was kind of a cute little game. I definitely want to play it a little bit more for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure there's more that I just can't think of in my brain right now.
I mean, it's. I guess we're thinking about like how recent is newly announced, because I remember, it's kind of funny. I remember a lot of people were kind of railing on Come On, like they were giving them a lot of guff for a lot of different things, and then Come On announces that they're coming out with a Masters of the Universe board game, and now everyone is just like loving Come On. So it's been funny for me to see the shift in attitudes towards the company. Now these are probably different voices coming up to talk about this, but I have no idea what this game is going to be about. But Masters of the Universe is really cool, so hopefully this lives up to that.
There's another game that I saw recently get some buzz. It's called Lost Ruins of Arnark or something like that.
Yeah, is that the one coming from CGE?
Yeah, it's a worker placement bag building game. But it looks super interesting.
Yeah, I just saw the trailer for that and couldn't tell anything about the game.
I know,
from the trailer.
right? Yeah. All right. Do we want to transition over to the games we've been playing?
Sure.
Who wants to start?
You pick.
Kira.
Jeremy. Right, Kira, you start. You want me to start?
Well, I have one thing to talk about that is the same thing we might talk about. So I guess I can start. You just put out a new review for Alma Mater. We've been playing that a few times, and it's been on my mind. So definitely a fun game. And I just saw today when I was looking for the the box for the winner. Earlier, I discovered that there's a little mini expansion for it.
Yep.
So
if you buy from the online store,
So yay, more content.
Yeah, I invite you guys to go watch the video for that. We have a review up on our channel for that one.
Yeah,
it just came out.
Yeah, so that's all I'll talk about for now, because I've been reading a lot of rules, but I haven't actually played everything yet because I haven't gotten together with anyone in a few days.
Well, we played something yesterday.
Oh, that's right.
We just played a game yesterday.
We did. We played bees.
And
actually,
I had a lot of fun with that.
Yeah, it was fun. It's a nice.
I won both times. Yeah, that might have something to do with it.
It always has something to do with it.
I don't usually win, so give it to me.
I'll go next. Gator Dave said, "Is Alma Mater a replacement for Coimbra?" Watch the review. That'd be my answer.
Oh yeah, I don't know.
No.
Does any board game ever replace another board game?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
I just bought Marco Polo 2, and I'm assuming it replaces Marco Polo.
Yes. When your wife mandates that you have one room to put board games in, and when you run out of room, one game has to come out for a new one to go in. So, all right. So the games I'll talk about, I just today put up a review for this one, Cosmic Encounter Duel. I know this has been expected from a lot of people. So this one went up maybe an hour or two ago. It is a two-player version of Cosmic Encounter, which has been around since 1977. If you guys didn't know, it's been around for a long time. So they've taken a multiplayer game and condensed it down into a two-player game. This is kind of a trend that's been going on for a while. Probably the best one that I like is Seven Wonders Duel, which I think is in fact as good, if not better, than the original game. Although I really love Seven Wonders.
Yeah.
And it's been to varying degrees of success. There's been good ones and there's been bad ones. I would consider another bad one, at least one I didn't like, was Caverna, because Caverna is a fantastic game, but the two-player game is completely forgettable. So watch the review and let me know what your thought is, because this is a very different review than what we've done in the past. So anyway. Have fun with that.
Very different. It's a weird game too.
It is weird. And then the last one I'll talk about is this. And I got to play this last night with my wife, and I really like this. It's called Fort. It's from Leader Games, or Letter. Is it Leader or Letter? Leader Games. Yeah, Leader Games. Same people as Root, and as you can tell by the artwork, it looks very similar to the Root style. It's a deck builder, but it does some things that are really, really unique. Number one, you have a hand of cards, just like any other deck builder. You have 5 cards in your hand. And then the cards that you don't use go to a place above your board called the yard. This is a place where people can take those cards from you. And you may say, well, why wouldn't you use all your cards? Well, in this game, you have to use the full extent of all your cards, or not use them. On each card, you have 2 parts. You have a community part, and then you have a part that's just for you. And on your turn, you have to use one of those 2 to its full maximum ability in order to use the other one for any part of that ability. But everyone can follow you at the table, which again, is really unique on that community part. So if I take the full part of the bottom part of the card for me, then everyone else at the table can take the community part. But I could also take both of those parts, but I have to do one of them in full. And I thought that was really, really unique. It plays out really fun. You're building a fort, like a kid's fort. So I enjoyed it. And I think it would probably play better as a 3 and 4 player game, but it was fun as a 2-player game. So very different deck builder.
All right, I'll go so David can wrap up. How about that?
All right.
A couple things. First of all, Jeremy and I got the chance to sit down and play Ascension Tactics, which was pretty cool. I mean, I think that they've really done a good job turning Ascension into a tactical miniatures game. Like it feels like you're playing Ascension. It took maybe a turn or two for it to just feel like this was an extension of the Ascension experience. So that was really neat. I'm really looking forward to seeing what the final version of that looks like, because we played a prototype. I've been playing a lot of prototypes because I'm stuck at home, and I've been playing a lot of games that have solo modes. Most recently was the game Uprising, which is, I think, on Kickstarter right now. I've played that game on Tabletop Simulator, and it was fun. But being able to actually play it with physical components today was really nice. I actually just got done playing it. It's still set up on my table behind me. And I lost terribly, which is a trend that I've been seeing in co-ops. But this game is gorgeous. I mean, check it out on Kickstarter because it looks really, really good. It's really cool, very thematic, and lots of things to do on your turn. And can be played solo as well. Last thing I want to talk about is Isle of Cats, which we have been obsessed with here. We have a couple friends who have been coming over, who have also been quarantining, to just play Isle of Cats. And we'll play 2 or 3 times a night. And I just got the Late Arrivals expansion content that introduces some new cat shapes. But I don't know what it is about this game, because it's actually a pretty simple game, but I am just super addicted to it. I
love
can't
that
stop
game.
Playing it.
It's one of the best. It's really one of the top games for me anyway that's come out in a long, long time. It's easy to get played. Everyone seems to really enjoy their play.
Yeah.
Is that it, Ryan?
That's it for me. Those are the main ones.
Well, at the risk of sounding like we're just promoting all of our reviews, the one thing I'd played recently was Dead Reckoning. I wanted to get one more last play of it in because we had to ship the game off away from us after we got our review done, which we also posted. So, shameless plug, go out and watch that review to see what we thought. But this game has a lot going on. It's all driven by the card crafting mechanic, of course. It really feels like a deck builder, but you're also just controlling a massive sandbox of a pirate game, which in and of itself is really, really interesting. and you're trying to get 4 achievements done. Whoever does that triggers the end of the game. But there's a lot going on. It feels like a really interesting thematic pirate game, and it's probably I'll save the rest so you can watch the review. But it's a really great implementation of the card crafting mechanic for sure.
Is that everything?
That's it for me. I do hope to play Stick'em. Have you guys played Stick'em?
Yeah, we did.
3 of us have played it.
We did. We played it a 3-player game. I don't think it worked with 3 players. I think you
Here's
need
why it
4.
doesn't work, because I actually won, and I haven't won a game in a long time. So of course it doesn't work.
Sure,
I
but that's not why
destroyed you guys.
That's not why it didn't work.
I know, I'm teasing.
Because the game works on majorities. Like if one player plays one card and another player plays another color, then you look at majority of colors. And with 3 players, like you're not making a ton of majorities. Like I
want everyone that's watching the show to know that this is Ryan whenever he loses. He goes into these explanations of why games don't possibly work. And that's his explanation.
Considering I lose 80% of the games I play,
I think we should have an episode where we all call each other out for how we behave when we lose.
No, my point is, I want to play it with 6 players so I can really see the game work.
Yes.
It's not a criticism of the game. It just some games don't work at 2 players. Like some games don't work at 3. Yeah. I think this one needs
it needs more players.
4, but I think it would be best at 6.
You are absolutely correct.
Any game that has ever said it requires 3 to something more than 3 really probably needs 4. Like whenever it requires 3 and not just 2, it really means probably 4 because 3 barely works. I'm looking forward. I've heard great things about it. I want to play it at least 4 players, maybe more.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, let's do a 6-player game. I bet we could find people.
Yeah. All right, that's all. Sorry, I'm done.
All right. So let us know your guys' thoughts on virtual cons. Are you guys watching them? Which ones are you watching? What benefit are you guys getting out of those shows? Let us know in the comments below. Please, we invite you guys to go watch our new reviews. We're very proud of the work that we've put in behind them. We'll keep doing reviews. We'll do more reviews than we've ever done in the past. We're going to focus, at least I'm going to focus on that, and I hope the guys do too. We realize that they're super important to you guys. They're important to our channel and building that rapport with you guys. And they're fun to do, to be quite honest. I've gotten more enjoyment from doing those reviews than I have from a lot of things in the past. So anyway, if you guys have any questions, make them in the comments below. Be safe, wear a mask, please, and we will see you guys next time.